Hello everyone, welcome to Next IAS. My name is Anil Tiwari. I am here with another session of Daily News Decoded. Today we are taking up 5 articles. These articles are as follows. You can see on the screen also. The very first article we will take is India-China relations, because today there was a good news that India-China's relations are improving. Second, we will take up a report released on Friday by the Niti Aayog, that is the Fiscal Health Index report of 2025. This is very important because it is basically promoting competitive federalism in India. We will see through this report, we will understand certain concepts, and we will see how states can do better. On the other hand, we will have 3 articles in the prelim sections, and I would request you to like, share and discuss, and let us jump right into our discussion for the first article. So let's take up today's first article. The article relates to India-China relations, and recently, as you have seen, our representatives from Ministry of External Affairs went to China and he met the Chinese external minister, and they come to an agreement that they will finally back down on all the tensions. So this newspaper article mentions direct flights and issuing visa, and the visit to one of the pilgrim site in Tibet. All these things will be resumed. So this comes in the backdrop of restoration of strained relations between India and China. The relevance will be GS2, your GS2 paper. In this, India and its neighborhood relations will be the syllabus point. Moving ahead, UPSC has asked questions on India and China because it is very important that India takes care of its neighborhood. So keeping that in mind, let's jump and see what changes they are thinking to bring in 2025. So this is an agreement so far, and we will see the development in the coming future. What all things they have mentioned so far, they have mentioned that Kailash Mansarovar Yatra will be resumed. They have agreed to resumption of direct air services. So recently, if you have seen, there was a news that Bangladesh and Malaysia has benefited a lot because they were acting as a connecting point to China. A lot of people go to China. Many students study in China, but we were not having direct flights to China. That will be resumed. Then hydropower project concerns. So these concerns will be taken care of. We will share the data on the Brahmaputra river majorly. So China has upheld this data since long, and we need that data in order to predict floods and to safeguard not just India, the Assam part, but the Bangladesh also. So that is one thing that they have discussed. Then improve transparency in both economic relations and trade relations. So there are many concerns regarding China hiding certain data, or let's say they are practicing some certain things like dumping. So we have seen that China is dumping cheap material in India to challenge the industry in India. Then economic and trade issues. So we have a large trade deficit with China, and we are very deeply entrenched with Chinese economy. Anything they do will impact our economy very greatly. Then exchange of journalists. This is people to people contact. We have banned journalists from each other's country. Many news channels are also banned in China, and in India many news channels from China are also banned. So this will be taken care of. Now, how did we come to this present estranged relation between India and China, this tensed relation between India and China, that we need to look at. So let's decode India-China relations. A brief about the ancient ties, because that's where you can get the idea, or let's say you should always write this deep relations in order to understand the present time. So in IBC during Indus Valley civilization time, and during the let's say the first urbanization in India, second urbanization in India for that matter, we had great ties with China, both in IBC and Silk Route time around 2000, more than 2000 years ago. Then we developed into this cultural ties through Buddhism. So it is well known that Buddhism went to China from India. Many Buddhist travelers like Winsang, all these people came to India to study Buddhism. They collected books and they took these books to China. From there we saw this common colonial history in which we both suffered and we both came out of this colonial subjugation, and each other's leaders, be it Mao Zedong or Jawaharlal Nehru, both admired each other countries on these lines, that both fought out this colonial yoke. Now, how did these relations span out in the latest time period, that is after independence? Let us look at. In 1950s, India was one of the first non-socialist bloc country which recognized China, and that was very important. Diplomatic recognition was very important. Also, we accepted and promoted China's UNSC seat. The United Nations Security Council seat was a permanent seat in the P5. So that we supported, and then we developed this relation into a great friendship relations. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was the Nara, and we come to a agreement that is called Panchsheel Agreement. This is very important, and we will use this Panchsheel Agreement as a way forward to India-China relations, because it is very, very good and good way forward, or let's say best practice to follow between these two countries. In 1962, moving ahead, we had a war because of Tibetan issue. Tibet issue. This Tibet issue was very important for China because they wanted to have a greater landmass for their country, but it was culturally more close to India. Tibetan culture is more close to, let's say, Ladakh culture, Ladakhi culture, Arunachal, and the whole northeast and north part of India. So you all know that Tibetan refugees came to India. That irked China, and there was a war, and we lost the war. China won the war, and it was a very embarrassing moment for India. From then on, the relations deteriorated further. Then in 1970s, India went close to Soviet Union. You remember the Indo-Pak war and Bangladesh liberation and signing of strategic partnership with Soviet Union by India. But China was against Soviet Union, the idea of Soviet Union, because it was expanding like anything. So India and China on that line were not on good parts. It went on till Rajiv Gandhi's visit in 1988. 1988, Rajiv Gandhi visited China, and that's where relations started normalizing. Meanwhile, during 1978 reforms, China started developing economically. We did these reforms in 1991. China did it in 1978, and their economic rise also made us to be more to open our gate, that India was also trying to get towards it. Then from 1990 onwards, post-Cold War era, there was a lot of cooperation and a lot of mechanisms that were established, majorly a special representative mechanism. So this was started during Atal Bihari period's time, special representative mechanism, and then there was working mechanism on cooperation and coordination, WMCC. All these mechanisms, these special and let's say different kind of medium to talk on different issues. So for example, border issues, let's say on border issues there were working mechanisms on cooperation and coordination, this WMCC. These people will meet and discuss the difficult border issues between India and China. So for your knowledge, for your information, India and China's border are very complex, because it's extend from Xinjiang, Ladakh in one side to Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland on the other side. So it's a very long border, very complex border. So that's why needed special kind of mechanism. So these two mechanisms established, and this led to betterment of basically relations. Moving ahead, what has happened in recent time? This is very important, because by this you will understand the present development. So in 2017, we had Doklam standoff, significantly straining the bilateral ties. Then we had in June 2020 this Galwan Valley clash. So border clashes and armies or paramilitary moving beyond LAC, the line of actual control, is the mainstay of India-China border dispute. So the boundary is not agreed upon. Historical boundaries are not agreed upon by China, because they think that colonial agreements are not tenable. So that leads to they moving the border unilaterally, and we pushing them back, and then again they pushing us back. All these goes on, and during pandemic this happened. This Galwan Valley clash happened. You all remember, and then India's app ban and other restriction that India imposed on China, and then China also had some technical holds on various UNSC debates. For example, Sajid Mir, this Mumbai attack accused, and there was a discussion on this terrorist, but China blocked it technically on behest of Pakistan. And remember that while India-China relations did not come to complete potential, in China-Pakistan relations have been really good, as they call it, iron friends, they are like brothers, iron brothers, the India, China and Pakistan. So in light of this close relation with Pakistan, China acts differently in UNSC. Then in 2024, we had this agreement during BRICS summit that patrolling arrangement will be taken care of at the borders so that we can disengage on the border. So this led to the further development in January 2025, that is resumption of bilateral ties. All these things which we discussed here, this is January 2025. So this is a brief story of India-China relations and how come we are here, that we are discussing that direct flight should be there, then this Mansarovar Yatra should be open. All these things should be taken care in a context. Meanwhile, remember that India-China trade, this has been growing ever since the reforms, and the this bigger bar is China's export to India, the smaller bar is the India's export to China. So remember, there is a trade deficit, big trade deficit. We will discuss it. So here comes the issues and challenges. What are the issues and challenges between India and China relations? So we have border dispute and military standoffs that we have discussed. We have trade imbalances, around $83 billion trade deficit is there between India and China. Negative to India. While India has a $30 billion plus trade surplus with USA, but with China we have trade imbalances. On top of that, there are many economic practices by China which hamper our growth. They anti-dumping duty we impose because they dump cheap steel, cheap material into India. Secondly, China is still a major player in the electronic sector. So all the mobile phones come from China, although we are trying to assemble certain parts in India, but majorly the mid-range segment come from China. Then we have a dependency on pharmaceutical industry. Major industry in India, export industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they depend for the critical supplies from China. That is another issue. Then there is this geopolitical issue of weaponization of the supply chain, global supply chain, weaponization of the global supply chain. What is global supply chain? For example, you produce certain product in India. That product will be produced by assembling 2-3 elements. Those elements will come from, let's say, China, USA, Japan, and these will be supplied to India. Now this is called supply chain. This produced final good that we are producing will go to, let's say, USA or Europe for final consumption. This is all called supply chain. What China does is China basically dominates supply chain. If it comes to, let's say, the global trade route in the sea, this is controlled majorly by China. Let's come to raw material. This is controlled by China. Cheap production, this is also China. So remember, China is dominating in all these areas, and that is a concern for India. So geopolitical rivalry is there. Okay, trade imbalance, geopolitical rivalry is there because China is a P5 member, India is not. Then China has many ambitious issues also, ambitious projects also. For example, China has BRI. And then there are strategic entanglements also. If you have heard of string of pearls, what is string of pearls? China is trying to put a garland around India. What garland of what? Garland of certain strategic positions which they will hold in order to block India from doing its activity freely in the neighborhood. So string of pearls is there. Then there is 5-finger diplomacy, 5-finger strategy of China. What is 5-finger strategy of China? In Tibet. So in Tibet, China is trying to spread 5 fingers, starting from Ladakh, going towards Nepal, then going towards Sikkim, then Bhutan, and then Arunachal Pradesh. So these 5 fingers are there from Tibet to India. All these strategic entanglements, and it is also cooperating with Pakistan, and Pakistan is a die-hard enemy of India. So these strategic entanglements combined with China's ambitious project, that is BRI, going from POK to Gwadar. This POK is a disputed territory. How can China be allowed to build such a road? That's an issue. Then debt trap diplomacy is there. Before that, let me discuss the water dispute. So China is a major source of water for Indian rivers, be it Ganga, be it Yamuna, or be it our Brahmaputra, all originate from China. And China can control all these rivers. Recent example is that China is trying to build the world's largest dam in Tibet over Brahmaputra. That will create a large issue for India, not only India, for Bangladesh also. So this is a water dispute. Then debt trap diplomacy, this is very important. Be it Maldives, be it Sri Lanka, be it Bangladesh, be it Seychelles, be it Djibouti, all these countries, be it Pakistan for that matter. Pakistan has around $29 billion debt. Sri Lanka has given away the Hambantota port. Maldives is trying to develop certain bridges and infrastructure based on this debt trap diplomacy. So China is using this debt trap diplomacy in order to influence these neighbors, and India has to face this challenge. Moving ahead, after discussing these challenges, let us discuss what is the significance, or let's say significance of this new initiative between India and China. We will discuss the way forward soon enough, but let us discuss the significance of India-China relations and thawing of these relations, basically easing of these relations. How they are significant? They are significant because there is an emerging new world order. You have recently seen Trump has been elected, and his policies are very outlandish and different from other predecessors. There is a tariff war which Trump has inaugurated. He has put 100%. He has warned that he will put 100% tariff on India. And then weaponization of technology and trade is happening. So, for example, the use of TikTok by China, or let's say recent AI development, that is if you remember DeepSeek, the new AI model which China has developed very cheap, it has challenged OpenAI. So this weaponization of technology and trade we have discussed already. Withdrawal of liberal democratic rule-based players and replacement by authoritarianism is seen. So in many countries, people are seeing China as a better model than USA, and USA's withdrawal from, let's say, WHO or UNESCO or many other initiatives like NATO. So Trump has been warning NATO that they will not supply any support for NATO countries, be it fight with Russia on your own. For example, in Russia-Ukraine crisis, we will discuss Russia-Ukraine crisis in world conflicts. There are rising many world conflicts. For example, Russia-Ukraine, in it, China can play a major role by supporting Russia, because China is very close to Russia now. So if China is close to Russia, who will suffer? Authoritarianism will rise, and the democratic countries like India, like USA will suffer. Then Iran, Afghanistan. In Iran, China is supporting Iran. And then in Afghanistan, China is playing a major role. Afghanistan, Pakistan and China has had a trilateral or quadrilateral dialogue over resolving the Taliban issue. So in this region, China is playing a major role, and USA is exiting all these countries. So this is a major concern, world conflicts. And then India and its neighborhood, this is very significant, because in all of its neighborhood, be it Pakistan, be it Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan and Indian Ocean, China has been playing a major role. So for example, in Indian Ocean, India is supposed to be the net security provider. But what is happening? China is coming and doing not only just patrolling these waters, but also supplying defense equipments to many countries. And for example, if we can discuss, we have discussed Sri Lanka, we have discussed Bangladesh, Pakistan and Bhutan. Let's discuss Nepal. So in Bhutan, we have this responsibility of providing security. So that is a responsibility to us. In Nepal, the left government has been elected, and they are aligned, Maoist government basically has been elected. They are aligned to China. In Bangladesh, recently we have seen there is a coup, and Sheikh Hasina was removed, and the Bangladeshis may build a new nation, new diplomacy. They may be going towards China. Pakistan is already in the laps of China. So all these things are very significant important to understand the significance of India-China relations. Why and how India should cooperate and India should come over this strategic imbalances in relations. What can be the way forward in this issue? Way forward can be two things: Panchsheel and Act East policy. Let me discuss Act East policy. This is nothing but a strategic and economic priority by India to its neighbors in the east. So recently Indonesian president has been the chief guest in 26 January. So what India is trying to do? India is trying to not only look towards east, India is trying to act towards east. So we will have a better relation with east. People to people contact, trade relations, free trade agreements, all these things we are planning to do, and that can basically counter China's efforts, especially in South China Sea. What is Panchsheel? Panchsheel is more important regarding India and China. So there can be one more neighborhood first policy. There can be one more way forward. Neighborhood first policy. This can counter Chinese influence in the immediate neighborhood. What is Panchsheel? Panchsheel is basically a peaceful coexistence, an agreement for peaceful coexistence. In this, there are 5 principles. They are largely related to that we will recognize each other peacefully, we will not do aggression, we will be having mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and we will have an equal view of each other, and then we will move forward towards peaceful coexistence. This is Panchsheel agreement signed way back in India, between India and China. What is neighborhood first policy? That I have discussed, that India will treat neighborhood as a first preference. Why all these things might not be working? Because of the sheer difference between India and China economically and defense wise. Because China has deep pockets, it has a lot of money to shell, and further China is implementing these products on time. Implementation is also an issue with India and China. So keeping that in mind, I'll give you a question. You can practice this question. This question basically asks you about the India-China relations and how we can evaluate these relations. All right. So take your time, write this question and submit in the Google Doc for which we have provided a link in the description. And we will jump to the next discussion. So the second article in Decoded section relates to the Fiscal Health Index Report 2025, and it is an important report when it comes to competitive federalism and when it comes to, let's say, fiscal management, fiscal discipline. This report is very important. Why? Because this is bringing out the clear picture among the important states, that is 18 states they have taken up. So in these states, because of their size, they impact the overall economy at a large scale. So if we can check their fiscal prudence and overall fiscal management, then we can have a sustained growth. We can have resilient state governments that can serve the people, because state governments are responsible for a lot of social services, education, law and order, health. All these things are responsible primarily of the state governments, including the Panchayati Raj institutions and all the social services in general. So this report is very important and you should cover it for mains and prelims, both perspectives. We will take up in both perspectives and we will see what learnings we can get from this report. There are certain concepts which they have used. We will discuss them shortly. So the backdrop is the release of the report, and the relevance is in GS2 and GS3. GS2 federalism, governance, and GS3 it is fiscal policy. UPSC has already asked question on fiscal policy and federalism. They ask question on every year. So you should be very much aware about what kind of fiscal relations center and state has. Right now we are focusing on this report because this report is a big report and it has some important concepts. So we will not go deeply into the financial relation between center and state, which you will be studying anyways. I'll ask some questions. I'll put some questions specifically for prelims perspective, that you have to tell me which part has these center state relations and let's say financial relations, and what article, the range of article you have to tell in the comment section. All right. And let's jump to the main discussion of this article. So this report is released by Niti Aayog, and they have based on contribution to India's GDP, demography, total public expenditure, revenues, overall fiscal stability. All these factors they have taken into account, and they have considered 18 states, 18 major states, leaving the northeastern states and the Himalayan states. They have not taken them up because these states are largely dependent on public expenditure because they have limited resources. So they have not taken them up. Rather, they have taken these 18 states. These states are responsible for approximately, another fact, 2/3 of public spending. So whatever government spends, they form the 2/3 of it. They have 1/3 of total revenue also. Further, the objective of this report is to assess and study the state's fiscal health, and then identify areas for improvement, and then promote best practices through the composite index. We will see what kind of best practices good states follow, and there is a mosaic of, let's say, a mixture of policies followed by different states, and all states are not performing good on all aspects. So first thing first, let us break down this composite index in this report, and we will see what kind of sub indexes it has. It has some indices. So these sub indices basically explain how a state is performing well in fiscal discipline or not. For your information, the data has been taken from none other than our CAG, because they analyze these data, budgetary expending and everything, and then we have budgetary transactions available for all states. The first index is quality of expenditure. So expenditure is what government spends on different things. Majorly government builds road, schools, hospitals. Apart from this, government also has a structure. They have employees, they have day-to-day business, they give salary, they give pension, they do a lot of things. So we have two kinds of expenditure with the government. One, that is, we call it capital expenditure or long-term expenditure that creates infrastructure, they build the economy, they provide free of cost services to everyone. Roads, for example, everybody can access. If there is a highway built throughout the state, then the state's economy will improve. So that is called capital investment. Then there is day-to-day investment, that is revenue expenditure. This is short term, and this also forms the part of the expenditure of the government. Now this index is quality of expenditure. So what kind of expenditure is a good expenditure? As a thumb rule, remember, an expenditure which brings more revenue, improves the economy, benefits everyone, and is of long-term nature is generally considered as good expenditure. So they are saying states, what kind of states are performing good in quality of expenditure? They are taking two things. They are saying what is the total developmental expenditure over total expenditure. So they are saying wherever you have spent on building school and let's say hospitals, that share we will see. Total expenditure, developmental expenditure. Then they are saying total capital outlay over gross state domestic product. So what is gross domestic product? We all know whatever you are producing in a boundary, or let's say on your territory, that is called GDP. And what is state GDP? Inside the state boundary. So that is GSDP. In this GSDP, how much is your capital expenditure, capital outlay? Capital is what? Something that is for long term. So these two things they are picking up for quality of expenditure. And in this, MP and Bihar are ruling the routes. Basically, top performers are MP and Bihar. Remember, this is for financial year 2023. Now, at the bottom in this quality of expenditure is Kerala. So, these two things are not spent good in Kerala. Look at it. Second, they are saying revenue mobilization. Revenue mobilization meaning that you can earn money. Revenue meaning whatever is coming to you. So, how well you can mobilize your revenue from tax, from non-tax, from industries, from maybe somewhere else, central government, whatever. So whatever revenue you are generating, how well you can mobilize. They are testing you on that. So they are taking state own revenues. Now they are focusing on your own revenue, because sometimes states get a lot of what funding from center. So now here is a question for prelims: which article mentions the grants? There are two kinds of grants. What are those two kinds of grants, and in which articles these grants are mentioned? You have to tell. But they are not including these grants. They are saying that remove those grants from central government. You tell whatever you are generating on your own over your GDP. Then they are saying state own revenue over total expenditure. They are also asking तुम्हारा expenditure कितना है, how much you spend over your whatever you earn. Alright. So these two things they are taking. In this section, we have winner as Goa and Telangana. You can guess why they are at top. Goa has a lot of tourist activity, and then Telangana, they have Hyderabad with them, and they are a new state. They are developing a lot of industries. Telangana. Alright. So you can kind of guess that states are doing good because developmental expenditure. Bihar is trying to build schools because it has a low base, so they are trying to spend a lot on developmental expenditure. Kerala already have spent a lot. Now they are not spending that much. So this percentage wise they are getting at the bottom or at the top. But you will see that in revenue mobilization, Bihar is at the bottom because of lack of industries, you can say, because lack of, let's say, a lot of economic activity does not take place in Bihar. So that's the second thing. Third is fiscal prudence. Fiscal prudence क्या होता है? Fiscal prudence meaning that whatever you do, spend and expenditure and revenue, how well you are managing it through borrowings. That's fiscal prudence. So they are asking gross fiscal deficit over GSDP, and they are taking revenue deficit over GSDP. So there are two deficits. Revenue deficit meaning day-to-day deficit. So whenever you are having to buy a loan, for example, you are spending more than you earn. What you will do? You will spend on credit card. You will take loans. But we will see your spending is good or bad based on what products you are spending. So if I see that you are spending good amount on your food, you are spending good amount on learning some skill, you are spending good amount on, let's say, your health, and you are spending by borrowing, then we will say, okay, it's a prudence fiscal policy. But if you are spending a lot on partying, on, let's say, just spending here and then, buying fancy clothes, then we will say this fiscal prudence is not good. Similarly, they are saying whatever your fiscal deficit is there, gross fiscal deficit is there over GDP, and they are saying whatever revenue deficit you have, revenue deficit is day-to-day deficit. Day-to-day deficit meaning हर दिन का खर्चा, रोजमर्रा का खर्चा आप उधारी से कर रहे हो. So if it is high, then it is a bad thing. So revenue deficit they are taking over GSDP. Further, they are using debt index. What is debt index? They are trying to gauge whatever debt you have, what kind of debt you have. Okay, whether it is sustainable or not. So second is debt sustainability. So debt is basically whatever udhari or let's say debt you have. So we are looking at interest payment over revenue, meaning whatever revenue receipts you are getting, how much you are spending on your interest payment. Because if you are paying more on your interest payment, meaning you have a lot of debt. That's why you are paying a lot of interest. And then outstanding liability over GSDP. Whatever outstanding liability you have over your GDP, that will show the part of liability in your GDP. You are a small state, but you have a large liability, then this will inflate. Further, the debt sustainability, how they are seeing that, okay, you have taken debt, but whether you can keep on taking this debt और आप मार्केट से पैसा कब तक उठा सकते हो, ये देखने के लिए वो ये देख रहे हैं कि ग्रोथ रेट ऑफ GSDP, however you are growing, your state is growing, उसके साथ साथ आपका इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट का रेट कैसे ग्रो कर रहा है, मीनिंग हाउ मच ग्रोथ इज देयर इन इंटरेस्ट रेट ओवर योर GDP growth. So that will prove if you are growing faster in your interest payment, you are paying a lot of interest, but your GDP is not growing, meaning that you are spending somewhere badly. So these 5 sub indices, they are used to understand states where they are when it comes to their spending. Moving ahead, If you have understood all these 5 indices, then this report will serve you a good service to write good answers, to write in an argumentative manner that okay, this thing if they do, then they can manage their fiscal deficit better. Now let's see state-wise rank list, FHI rank list. So Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Goa, Jharkhand, Gujarat. See the top states. These are across time from 2014, from 2014-15 to 2022-23. These two columns are averages of all these things, averages of all these things, these 2 columns. And basically all these columns, let me mark them, all these columns are year wise. So if you see closely, I will take only a minute, you will see that certain states are continuously performing bad. For example, Punjab. So if you read about Punjab, they only allocated 10% of their expenditure on capital. So if you don't invest on, let's say, capital spending, then what will happen? You will not have revenue sources for you. You are spending on salaries, pensions, everyday day-to-day spending. Then you will not have capital. But see the Odisha, because of its mineral resources, because of the industrial activity in Odisha and recent development in Odisha, they are being on top throughout the time period. So they are spending a lot on capital expenditure. That's why they are doing good. Then we have, let me discuss the top performing state in fiscal prudence. So in fiscal prudence, Jharkhand and Goa were top. Fiscal prudence में, meaning जो खर्चा कर रहे हैं वो अच्छे काम के लिए कर रहे हैं. Then Punjab was at the bottom. Then we have debt index. In debt index, Odisha and CG, they were at the top, but West Bengal and Punjab were at the bottom. Then we have growth rate, debt sustainability. In this, Gujarat at the top and then CG at the bottom. So you see different states. For example, Chhattisgarh, it is bad in certain things but good in certain things. यानी यहाँ देखो, Chhattisgarh is taking a lot of debt, but it is not sustainable because they might be not growing as much as they are taking udhari. Then you see here, Punjab is basically suffering. Punjab is suffering because in all aspects it is performing bad. Then if you see here, Bihar we have discussed already. Alright. So this is the idea, and in this you can see that certain states they have recovered from past. Certain states did not recover at all. Certain states sometimes felt a little bad or they faltered, but they are now good. For example, Jharkhand. But certain states are continuously performing worse. Kerala, West Bengal, Andhra, Haryana, Punjab, Bihar for that matter, they are continuously performing badly on according to this FHI index released by Niti Aayog. Now, result of 2025 report in cumulative manner, composite index they have released. So this is composite index. In this, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Goa, which we have discussed already, they have created categories. First one is achiever, second one is front runner, third one is performer, and last is aspirational. They are not naming and shaming anybody. Everybody, at least you are an aspirational person. Second, you are a performer. Third, you are a front runner, and then you are basically achiever. The score is above 50, then you are basically achiever. Then between 40 to 50, you are a front runner, and if less than 40, you are a performer, and if it is below than 25, then you are aspirational. Moving ahead, if you analyze, then you will see that if you have strong revenue mobilization, meaning that you have resources for yourself, maybe industry, mines, or good economic activity like tourism, like Goa, then you will have strong revenue mobilization. We have seen the example in Goa. Effective expenditure management if you are doing, meaning just like Bihar, if you are doing a good developmental expenditure, then you will do good. And then if you have prudent fiscal practices, then also you will be in a good shape. For example, we have seen Odisha and CG. So all these are coming out of this index as a good practice to manage your revenue. So you can talk about two kinds of expenditures. You can talk about capital expenditure. You can give examples. You can talk about inherent capacity of states. You can say there are certain industries which should be developed in certain states to manage it better. Then you can talk about debt and debt sustainability. So what is debt sustainability and debt? That you take debt but you are growing faster than your interest payment. So all these things you can talk about. Then after analysis, let us look at the significance. What is the significance of this report? What do we learn out of this report? We learn that transparency is very important, because this report will show what state is performing at what level in what different sub indexes, and that way we can plug, we can target that state and let the fiscal FRBM Act basically work. So that will ensure that these states come out of this slumber and perform better. Then we can have enhanced tax compliance, because revenue, you have to mobilize revenue. All right. Then you can have targeted investments. Certain states are not performing good on capital outlays, so they can be targeting these expenditures. For example, Maharashtra, it invites almost all of the FDI in India, but certain states who are not inviting, they will change their practices in order to invite. Then we can see fiscal prudence. That can be a target for certain states, that okay, we do not have good, maybe we have good revenue mobilization, we have quality investments, but our fiscal prudence is not good. Then they can work upon that, meaning that they can spend better on capital expenditure so that their revenue expenditure goes down. Then accountability leading to stable economy. It ensures this report can basically lead to a stable economy. Reform and targeted intervention can be introduced. All these things can be understood from this report. Further, let's discuss a little bit about FRBM Act. It was aimed at, it came around 2003, 2004. It was aimed at government's fiscal management. It set some target. What is FRBM full form? You write in the comment section. Let me give you a task. In comment section, please mention what is the full form of FRBM Act. Alright. It sets target to reducing gross fiscal deficit and government's debt to GDP ratio. Same targets which this report is discussing. So objective was fiscal discipline and enhancing transparency in budgeting. Targets were as follows. Remember these targets. General government expenditure or debt needs to be reduced to 60% of GDP by 24-25. Union government has to reduce to 40%, and additional guarantees of loans secure against CFI has to not exceed 0.5% of GDP. This is basic about FRBM Act. No need to go much detail into it. Now try this question and submit your answer in the Google form that we put in the description. We will see your answers, and let's jump to the simplified section of our discussion. Let's start with the explained section of our discussion. First article we are taking is M23 Rebels, and these rebels are very important because UPSC usually asks question from Africa. All the civil wars they have asked, Sudan they have asked Ukraine war, they have asked Azerbaijan, they have asked many other civil wars that has happened. So M23 is important in that way. And what is the backdrop? There is a humanitarian crisis that is going on in Goma. Remember the city of Goma in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Which continent we are talking about? Yes, Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo. It must have Congo river in it. You guessed it right. Who are fighting in this civil war? So Democratic Republic of Congo is a result of clashes between Congolese forces and M23 rebels. So on the one hand, there is a conglomerate of the rebels, and on the other hand, there is Congolese army. So these two people are fighting. Earlier, these M23 people were supposed to become part of the Congolese army itself, but later on, they started fighting. So it has relevance of issues under issues of national and international importance. Let us explain this. Recently they have gained a lot of territory, basically certain towns in the Goma province of Democratic Republic of Congo. And what is this M23? This is nothing but March 23 movement, because there was a accord that was signed in March on March 23, 2009. So remember this date and the year. So M23 is one of the more than 100 armed groups fighting Congolese forces in the mineral-rich Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. As a thumb rule, remember in Africa, most of these issues, these civil wars, these fighting, these militias are controlling rich mineral resource of Africa, and they are exploiting the people and the environment also. The origin lies in 2012, where a faction of Congolese army break away because they thought that the 2009 accord was not being adhered to by the government. So why this accord was signed? You must ask this question. So this accord was signed to protect from these people named, here it is, Tutsi people basically led the revolt. The accord aimed at ending that revolt. So there was a revolt led by Tutsi people, protection against Hutu people. There are two different groups. I will discuss them here. So there were Hutu rebels. Against them, these Tutsis were rebelling, and that rebellion was broken by this accord of 2009. This accord was signed between National Congress for Defense of the People, CNDP, and Congolese government. So there are two parties. These two parties signed an accord, but this accord is not being upheld. That's why these people are again revolting, called M23 Revolt in Democratic Republic of Congo in Goma city. This is enough for your prelims perspective. Remember, there is a group called Tutsi. They were part of the rebel. There are many other ethnic groups in this area, and the grievance that these people have, if at all UPSC might ask sometimes, they have minority issues, that these people belong to minority and they are not being protected, and they wanted to get into the Congolese army. That is not being fulfilled. Moving ahead, you should know a little bit about Democratic Republic of Congo. Its capital is Kinshasa. It is neighbored by Angola, Zambia, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan, Central African Republic, and Republic of Congo. So remember, there is Republic of Congo. This is Democratic Republic of Congo. These are two different countries. Here is the map for your reference. It has a river, the Congo River. It is one of the major rivers of Africa, for that matter, one of the largest river in the world, and it has mountains, Rwenzori Mountains, and it has Virunga Range and Mount Nyiragongo. It is an active volcano. So remember the geography, it is very important because it has active volcano, it has mountain range, it has Congo rivers. There might be a question on these aspects. About the Democratic Republic of Congo further, it has rich resources like vital resources for your technology industry, for example, coltan, cobalt and gold. Alright, they have different ethnic groups, Hema, Lendu, and there are other ethnic groups, and usually these fightings are for access on these resources. And there is a practice question for you at the end of this discussion. You should tell which of the following is the neighbor of DRC. Alright, attempt this question. We will jump to the next article. This is Guillain Barre syndrome, and it is considered as an outbreak in Pune because around 73 people, or let's say 73 cases has been reported. It comes under Science and Tech GS3, and let us discuss a little bit basic about this disease. Usually UPSC asks what causes this disease, whether we have a cure or not, whether we have a vaccine or not. Recently UPSC has asked this question, so this is very important. And it is an autoimmune neurological disorder. Basically it has something to do with your mind or your brain. So it's an autoimmune disorder, and basically our own immune system bites us. So autoimmune neurological disorder. Now immune system attacks their peripheral nerves. I said it. So peripheral nerves are being attacked by our own immune system. People of any age can be infected. Usually certain diseases, they affect maybe children, maybe old age, but this can affect everyone, and especially adults and males. Remember, it's very unique, very out of place that male and young adult males are affected. It is a rare condition, around 1 or 2 per lakh population. Further, it is caused, it is not fully understood who causes it, but according to WHO, bacteria Campylobacter jejuni. Remember this, remember the name, Campylobacter jejuni causes this disease. There are symptoms. muscle pain happens, poor body become weak, lungs become weak, everything becomes weak because the nerves are becoming weak. And how does it affect the body? In basic terms, the myelin sheath, there is a fat layer around your nerves. There is a fat layer, we call it myelin sheath, that is damaged by this disease, and that impacts the nerve to send signal to your brain, and that causes weakness in the muscle. No known cure for GBS. You can do the plasma exchange in which antibodies are removed, and then intravenous immunological therapy is also there. Immunoglobulin theory is there, therapy is there. Basically, during COVID, if you remember, you can use this therapy. For example, somebody is old, their immune system is compromised, they cannot develop defense against these diseases. So the other healthy person who have been infected, or let's say vaccinated, they have these globulins, immunoglobulins, they can be transferred to that person and they can be cured. So this is a therapy. Further, take up this question and comment your answers in the comment section. Moving ahead, the last article for today is on Teesta Dam. Teesta is a river in Bengal, in Bangladesh, and there has been an incident in 2023 where a dam was broken because of glacial lake flood, and the dam broke away and then many people were killed. That dam has been approved for reconstruction, but with a better technology, newer technology, and government has approved it. But the environmentalists and the activists are calling out on the government, saying that you do a better assessment. That's the backdrop of this news. Where it is related to? It is related to Indian geography and your environment and ecology, biodiversity of GS paper 3. In explained section, let us look at the factor that I have already discussed, that Teesta 3 dam was affected by 2013 glacial impact, and its approval raises further question. And what are the major issues that you can see? You can see that natural disaster like 2023 can be repeated because these areas are seismologically and glacially very sensitive. So you can write that. Then you can say that construction flaws are there. Earlier the dam was of mix of rock and concrete. Now they are building a proper concrete dam, but earlier it was mix of rock and concrete. That was a flaw in the construction. And then they are saying that environmental risk is there because these areas harbor a lot of diversity. These areas are very sensitive to ecological changes, so they basically pose the risk. Limited progress is there. So in this area, in the Teesta river basin, I will tell you why Teesta river is mainly a focus for hydrological project, because it has a steep tangent, it has a steep decline. So there is a lot of potential for hydropower generation. That's why these dams are being created, but they are highly sensitive area. These are very highly sensitive areas. That's why this problem exists. So only 5 out of 47 projects that are proposed are optional, and 16 are still under review. So you can imagine the extent of sensitivity of this area. Only 5 out of 50, around 50. Now, so we need assessment. We need a better assessment. We need to take up the community consensus over it and then move ahead. Teesta river, a little bit about Teesta river. So it is a Himalayan river. It is a tributary of the mighty Brahmaputra river. Obviously, it will go into Bangladesh. It has left wing tributaries, right wing tributaries. So you can read these names. They have unique Chu in their names, CHHU, Chu. So you can guess that Teesta river tributaries has these names. So Lachung, Chakung, Dik, Rani, and Rangpo. So you can remember these left wing tributaries. Right wing tributaries are Jemuchu, Rangyongchu, Rangit river. So you can remember these tributaries. Location, it is located. It is coming from Sro Lamho Lake in the North Sikkim region of the Eastern Himalayas. Remember this origin, and then it is passing through Sikkim and then West Bengal, and also goes through Bangladesh, and it is considered as a lifeline of North Bengal because around a dozen districts basically in Bengal have Teesta river as its main river. It has a hydrological potential which I have discussed already. Large volumes of water with a steep gradient, खूब पानी और काफ़ी बहाव. So these two things makes it a good potential, and there are several dams like Teesta 3 and Teesta 5. Flood risks are there because on the upper ranges there is a lot of rain, in monsoon season, and that leads to flooding. So overflow in the lakes. Then Teesta is the fourth largest river of Bangladesh. If you can remember, please remember. Way forward in this section, you can say that diversification should be done in the energy sources. Just do not depend on the hydrological projects in sensitive areas. Then you can improve dam design, and you can improve the construction standards, and then comprehensive environmental impact assessment should take place. On this note, I'll ask you to solve this last question, and we will end this discussion here. I will request you to follow, share, and build a habit to watch these D&D sessions. We will be releasing a PDF most likely, and in the description you can download that, and keep stay tuned to the next IAS. Thank you.